Julie, you're all wet. Right outside of me, there's a thunderstorm. And if you were here, I'd let you out into the thunderstorm and get yourself all wet. Because Julius Wellhausen was an anti-Semite. He didn't try to kill the Jews. He tried to kill the belief in the sanctity of the Bible. His theories are well known because the first chapter in Genesis does not have the name Yud and a Hey and a Vav and a Hey, which they call, in a certain way, there's certain witnesses that call themselves by that name. So because that name is not found in the first chapter, therefore the people who wrote the Bible did not believe in that name. They believed in Elohim. And then the other subsidiary group got together and they overpowered them. And they combined their ancient text and made a hodgepodge and a smorgasbord out of all the texts together. That's basically what he said. Then he added that there was a P and a D. There were four different sources and 7 sources. They made 25. It doesn't make a difference. Julius, you're all wet. There's not a single shred of evidence to what you have to say. And let me just tell you, skeptics out there, the name Elohim, anybody who studied Kabbalah, anybody who studied Jewish philosophy, anybody who studied Talmud knows that the name Elohim refers to the Midas Hadin, the attribute of God's severity, judgment. When you create something from nothing, you make a specific creation, whether it's an atom or a photon or a neutron or a proton. You're making something specific, something defined. That is what the name Elohim does. The name Elohim, what it does is it defines, it limits, and it causes focus on a particular thing. So, the name Elohim will initially be the portion of creation because in order to create, you must define things. What are you defining? The Torah has a pattern, but you can't see the pattern unless you're familiar with all of its details, the details of the pattern. Let me just give you a little insight. I refer you to the great book by Ari Kaplan on the Sefer Yetzirah, the Book of Formation. The name Elohim in the first chapter of Genesis is mentioned in the creative process 32 times, then another 3 times in the conclusion. But the creative process has exactly 32 times the name Elohim. The Sefer Yetzirah, which was written sometime around the Mishnah or sometime before the Mishnah, I would gather it was written during the time of the Second Temple, is a compendium, a small, concise compendium of some of the Jewish mystical thought that was part of the tradition of the priests, and prior to that, the prophets who were priests as well. The introduction to Sefer Yetzirah is that God created the world with 32 pathways of wisdom. There are 32 elements of God's wisdom through which the world was created. What did that have to do with the Torah? So, in brief, those who study Kabbalah knows that there are 10 Sefirot, 10 elements of the divine persona which all of existence parallel. Man parallels those 10 spheres. The 10 spheres are set up like the primordial man. They are the essence of man on the highest level. And the human being is a tiny expression of those 10 spheros down here in this world. So there are 10 spheres. The world was created in Hebrew, the Holy Tongue. Hebrew has got exactly 22 letters, no more, no less. So the 32 pathways. Pathways means just like a road that allows travel from one place to another. God created 32 channels for existence to be able to exist and to become into being, which are the 10 sfirot and the letters of the Hebrew alphabet, because it is through the Hebrew alphabet that creation was done. By the statements of the Torah, that was the power through which creation was done, was made. And so since there are 22 letters and 10 sfirot, there are 32 channels for the divine energy to travel. Each one of these channels have with it the name Elohim, because Elohim means a focus on a specific, limited expression to be revealed. So God's name, that indicates specificity, limitation, definition, organization, order, law and order, all of these concepts apply to the name Elohim. Elohim is the lawgiver that creates laws of physics, that creates laws of interaction, laws of relationships. The name Elohim created all of the laws by creating the channels for those laws to become actualized. And that's why the name Elohim, the name Elohim is there, because Yud-Kei Vav-Kei Havaya means that which causes to be is singular. The name Yud-Kei Vav-Kei does not have to specify anything. It creates everything at once. But when you get specific, when you're creating specific entities, there you have to have Shem Elohim, and for each channel you have to have Elohim again, because it means that law, that entity, that channel that's directed for that particular element of creation. Since there are 10 spheros and 22 letters, which are the channels of creation, there has to be 32 times the name Elohim. And they go with a specific order. If I said it on a video, you're not going to remember it. If I showed it, you're not going to understand it from what I showed. So I'm going to tell you where you can see this. You can see this in the first chapter of the translation of the Sefer Yetzirah, the Book of Formation, written by Aryeh Kaplan. And he details this, he explains this very well. So now, Julius, you doofus, the name Elohim doesn't just mean a cult. The name Elohim means God's power to do specific things. It's mentioned 32 times because there are 32 channels. In the Shabbat, we say that God rested and God completed his creation. These are three additional aspects of creation, that there's an element of Shabbos, an element of rest and relaxation, an element of judgment which allows for something else other than that particular judgment, that particular activity. It allows for pleasure, it allows for rest, it allows for comfort, it allows for an entity, an element that's beyond Elohim. But you need to have another channel for it. You need to have Elohim to express it. Together, there are 35 times the name Elohim is mentioned. 35. No more, no less. Why 35? There's 7 days in the week. Everything in the Torah is expressed in groups of 7. So I want to tell you something. Julius, you had 2 hands. You never used them for anything proper. You just used them for your anti-Semitic rants. But you have 5 fingers on your right hand and 5 fingers on your left hand. So everything that God created that functions has 5 elements to it. And these 5 elements have 7 elements to them as well, because there are 7 days of the week, there are 7 emotions, there are 7 visible planets or visible stars, including the sun and the moon and the 5 planets. But everything that runs our world is in multiples of 7. So you have your 5 fingers, which represent 5 elements of judgment, or 5 elements of kindness, and each one of them is repeated 7 times, because there are 7 different channels through which God works. For example, you're looking at my ugly face, you notice that I have 2 eyes. I've got a nose with 2 nostrils. I've got 2 ears. Those are 6 openings. And the mouth is the 7th opening. Everything in this world follows a pattern of 7. That's why there's 7 days to a week. And so there are 7 times 5 names Elohim in the first chapter. And this repeats itself throughout the entire Torah. Everything that's significant is repeated 7 times. The Torah has the 7 elements repeating itself again and again, 7 different elements. And every single major story, every single major communication, all is divided into 7. So the Torah is not just a hodgepodge by some weird editors. The Torah is a highly sophisticated, planned document that has encoded within it layers upon layers of power, layers upon layers of energy and spirituality, all encoded in what appears to be a story, what appears to be God's speech to us, God's communication. So sorry, Julie, there was never any document that proved your theory. And anyone that knows anything about Jewish learning knows that your questions are just specious and your conclusions are lunacy. The reason why you made those conclusions is because you want everybody to believe that we Jews, a bunch of dumb guys, who just put things together and try to make it work. We're not a bunch of dumb guys who try to put things to make it work. As you know, over 20%, close to 25% of Nobel Prizes up until now have been given to Jews. The ones who made the Torah were not dummies either.